The Declaration High Sovereign Kethvaran stood at the center of the war chamber. His forearms spread wide as holographic maps of the galaxy swirled around him like dancing spirits. His silver scales gleamed under the purple lights of the command deck, and his crimson eyes burned with the fire of 10,000 years of conquest. Today, he announced to his gathered admirals and warlords, "We claim the final prize in the Orion sector." The assembled military leaders of the Valorian Dominion bowed their heads in reverence. They had conquered 43 species under this sovereign's rule, and none had ever resisted for more than a single rotation of their home world. On the main display, a small blue and green planet appeared, spinning slowly in the void of space. It was unremarkable in almost every way. A tiny world orbiting an average yellow star at the edge of nowhere important. "The humans," Kethvaran continued, his voice dripping with contempt, "have spread to only a handful of worlds beyond their birth planet. They are young, primitive, and divided among themselves. They will fall within days." Admiral Jeth Ari, the most decorated warrior in the Dominion's history, stepped forward with a predatory smile stretching across his elongated face. "Shall I prepare the dread fleet, my sovereign?" "Not yet," Kethvaran replied, raising one clawed hand. "First, we follow tradition. First, we send the declaration of dominance. Let them know their doom approaches, and watch them scatter like frightened prey." This was the way of the Valorian Dominion, and it had never failed. The declaration was more than words. It was a psychological weapon. Species across the galaxy had surrendered immediately upon receiving it, knowing that resistance meant only greater suffering. The transmission was prepared with great ceremony. It included footage of conquered worlds, images of the massive dread fleet, and recordings of species begging for mercy that never came. It was translated into every human language and broadcast across all frequencies that the humans use for communication. Kethvaran personally recorded the final message, his voice echoing with power and menace. "People of Earth and the human colonies, I am High Sovereign Kethvaran of the Valorian Dominion. Your worlds now belong to us. Your people will serve us. Your resistance will be crushed. You have one planetary rotation to respond with your complete and unconditional surrender. Failure to comply will result in devastation beyond your primitive imagination. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." The message was sent, and the entire war chamber waited in satisfied silence. Soon, the humans would respond with panic and terror, just like all the others. One day passed, and there was no response. The Dominion officials assumed the humans were too frightened to reply, paralyzed by fear as so many others had been. They waited another day, expecting desperate pleas for mercy. Nothing came. On the third day, Kethvaran demanded a report. His communications officers scrambled to investigate, and what they found left them utterly confused. "My sovereign," the chief communications officer reported with obvious hesitation, "our transmission was received by the humans, but there appears to be a problem." What problem could there possibly be? The message was categorized as something the humans call spam by most of their electronic systems. It was automatically deleted or sent to folders that are rarely checked. Kethvaran's scales flushed dark purple with anger. What of their governments and military leaders? The officer swallowed hard before continuing. "Several government officials did receive the message, my sovereign. One nation called it a probable hoax and forwarded it to a junior staff member. Another government agency is apparently investigating whether this violates something called broadcasting regulations. A third has requested that we provide additional documentation to verify the authenticity of this communication." The war chamber fell into stunned silence. This had never happened before in the entire history of the Dominion. "What about their news networks?" Admiral Jethari demanded. Surely their people are demanding answers from their leaders. The officer pulled up a display showing various human news broadcasts. One network had run a brief segment about the transmission, sandwiched between a report about weather and something called football scores. The anchor had laughed and made jokes about little green men. Another broadcast showed humans on something called social media, turning Cathvaran's image into what they called memes. They had added colorful text to his face, compared him to fictional creatures from their entertainment, and created songs mocking his threats. "They are not afraid," Cathvaran whispered, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. "They think this is a joke." Then, finally, a response came through official channels. The war chamber gathered eagerly to witness humanity's surrender. The message was short and automated. It read, "Thank you for contacting the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. Your inquiry is important to us and will be addressed in the order it was received. Current estimated response time is 6 to 8 weeks. Please do not send duplicate messages." Below that was another automated response from a different human organization. "Hello. We noticed you recently reached out. While we process your request, would you be interested in extending your vehicle's warranty? Act now for special savings." Cathvaran stared at the message for a long time, his mind struggling to process what was happening. In 10,000 years, no species had ever responded to the declaration of dominance with automated messages about vehicle warranties. "They are mocking us," Admiral Jathari growled, his hands clenching into fists. "This is an insult beyond measure." "Perhaps they are simply too primitive to understand the danger they face," suggested another advisor. "Perhaps their communication systems are truly this inefficient." But Cathvaran was not so sure. Something about this response or lack of response troubled him deeply. A species should recognize a threat to its existence, no matter how primitive they were. "Send the message again," he ordered. "And again after that. Flood every communication channel they have until they cannot ignore us." For the next several days, the Dominion bombarded Earth with transmissions. They sent threats, demands, warnings, and ultimatums. They displayed their weapons, their conquered worlds, and their endless armies. Humanity's response was to create more memes. Someone made a catchy song using Cathvaran's voice, and it became popular across the planet. Children were singing the words, "Your doom approaches," while dancing. A company started selling shirts with the High Sovereign's face and the words, "I survived the alien invasion," printed beneath it. One human comedian became famous by pretending to be Cathvaran and demanding the surrender of everyday objects. "I am the High Sovereign, and I demand the unconditional surrender of this sandwich." He would shout, and millions of humans would laugh. Standing in his war chamber, watching his threats become entertainment, Cathvaran finally understood that something was very wrong. These humans were not behaving like any species he had ever encountered. They were not afraid, and he did not know why. And for the first time in his long reign, the High Sovereign felt something cold and unfamiliar creeping into his hearts. He did not recognize it as fear, not yet, but it was there, waiting. "Prepare the fleet," he commanded, his voice hard as stone. "If they will not surrender to words, they will surrender to fire." The admiral saluted and rushed to obey, eager to restore the natural order of things. Surely, when the humans saw the dread fleet in their skies, they would finally understand. Surely, they would learn to fear. First contact gone wrong, the dread fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metal monsters. 200 warships blocking out the stars as they took position behind Earth's moon. Each vessel was a mountain of weapons and armor, capable of burning continents to ash and boiling oceans into steam. Admiral Jathari stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Silence, watching the small blue planet on his view screen. Soon, Those defiant humans would look up at their sky and see their doom. "Begin the display," he commanded. The fleet moved into a formation designed to terrify. Ships spread out in a pattern that would be visible from Earth's surface, their running lights creating an unmistakable message of overwhelming force. Weapon systems powered up, creating energy signatures that any species with basic sensors would detect. On Earth, astronomers did indeed notice the fleet. Telescopes around the world captured images of the alien armada, and within hours, the pictures spread across the planet. Admiral Jethari waited for the panic to begin. He expected emergency broadcasts, evacuation orders, and desperate military mobilizations. Instead, the humans started selling tickets. "What am I looking at?" the Admiral demanded as his intelligence officers showed him the human response. "It appears, Admiral, that several human organizations are offering what they call alien watching tours. People are paying money to travel to locations with clear views of our fleet. They are treating this as entertainment." One human news broadcast showed crowds of people gathered on beaches and mountaintops, pointing at the sky with excitement rather than terror. Children sat on their parents' shoulders, waving at the stars. Vendors sold food and drinks and cheap telescopes. "They have also created a betting pool," the officer continued nervously. "Humans are wagering money on various outcomes, whether we are friendly, whether we will land what we look like, and something called who gets abducted first." Jethari's claws dug into the armrest of his command chair. This was madness. Has their government made any official response? "Yes, Admiral. They have sent a representative to meet with us." Finally, some progress. Jethari straightened in his chair, prepared to accept the surrender of the human species. "Put them through." The view screen flickered, and then a human female appeared. She had dark hair pulled back severely from her face, tired eyes behind small glasses, and she was holding a cup of something that steamed. "Good morning, or whatever time it is for you," she said, taking a sip from her cup. "I am Margaret Chun, Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs. I will be your point of contact for this matter." Jethari leaned forward, trying to project mass through the screen. "Human, I am Admiral Jethari of the Valorian Dominion. Our fleet carries enough firepower to destroy your entire civilization. Your High Sovereign has already declared war upon your species. Surrender now, and some of you may be permitted to survive." Margaret Chun looked at him with an expression he could not read. Then she set down her cup and picked up a tablet. "Right, so, first things first, your fleet is currently parked in a restricted zone. Earth's moon and surrounding space are protected under the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. I am going to need you to move your vessels to an approved holding area." The Admiral blinked all four of his eyes. "What?" "Additionally," Margaret continued, scrolling through her tablet, "any formal visitation requires submission of Form 27B, which covers intent, duration of stay, and species identification. I can send you the digital version, but be warned that the file format may not be compatible with your systems." "Human, I do not think you understand the situation." "I understand perfectly, Admiral. You have a fleet. You want to invade. However, there are procedures. Without proper documentation, I cannot authorize any landing parties, military or otherwise." Jethari felt his scales beginning to itch with frustration. "We do not need your authorization. We will simply destroy one of your cities to demonstrate our power, and then you will." "That would be a Form 94C, Margaret interrupted, still looking at her tablet. "Hostile action against civilian populations. That goes through a completely different department. I can transfer you, but I have to warn you that they are very busy right now." "Something about a budget review." "You cannot be serious." "I am always serious, Admiral. It is the only way to survive in government work. Now, about that holding area. Enough." HFY roared. "I am terminating this communication. You will see the consequences of your disrespect." He jabbed a claw at the disconnect button, ending the call. For a long moment, he simply sat there, trying to understand what had just happened. "Admiral," his communications officer said hesitantly, "the human is attempting to reconnect. Ignore her. She says she is putting you on hold and that you should not disconnect again, or you will lose your place in the queue." The Admiral did not respond. He did not know how to respond. While the Dominion fleet waited in confusion, humanity continued to treat the invasion as a minor curiosity. Late-night comedy shows made jokes about it. Merchandise appeared online within hours. A group of humans launched a small rocket toward the fleet, not as a weapon, but to deliver a package containing something called pizza and beer as a welcome gift. The package was intercepted and analyzed. Finding it contained only food and an alcoholic beverage, the Dominion scientists were baffled. Was this some kind of poison? A biological weapon? It was neither. It was just pizza and beer, and the humans were apparently disappointed that no one sent a thank you note. Even more disturbing were the reports from the fleet's communication monitors. They had intercepted countless human transmissions discussing the fleet, and almost none of them expressed fear. "Maybe they are friendly," one human said in a recorded conversation. "Could be first contact. This is exciting. I hope they have better technology," said another. "My internet has been slow lately. Maybe aliens can fix that." "Do you think they like music?" wondered a third. "We should send them some music." And then there was the incident that would become legendary among the Dominion officers. A young human had somehow accessed the fleet's public communication frequency, a channel left open, specifically to receive surrender requests. Instead of surrendering, the human transmitted a video. The video showed a man dancing and singing a song with the words, "Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down." It played on repeat for 6 hours before anyone figured out how to stop it. When Admiral HFY reported to High Sovereign HFY, he did not know what to say. They had deployed 200 warships, the greatest display of military might in the sector, and humanity had responded with paperwork requests, pizza deliveries, and annoying music. "Perhaps," HFY said slowly, "we are approaching this incorrectly. Perhaps a ground assault will make them understand the reality of their situation. Send the Death Guard." The Death Guard were the elite warriors of the Dominion, genetically perfected soldiers who had never lost a battle. If anyone could make the humans understand fear, it was them. Or so the Dominion believed. They did not know that humanity had been fighting itself for 200,000 years. They did not know that humans had invented horrors that would make the Death Guard weep. They did not know that these strange, small creatures treated almost everything as either a problem to solve, a joke to laugh at, or a challenge to overcome. The Death Guard were coming to Earth. They had no idea what awaited them. The invasion commander Vethrak had served in the Death Guard for over 60 years, and in that time he had conquered 11 worlds. His scales were marked with the ceremonial scars of 100 victories, and his name was spoken with fear across 3 star systems. Now he stood in the drop pod with his elite squad, preparing to descend upon the human city called Tokyo. 2 other teams were heading to New York and São Paulo. Together, they would demonstrate the true horror of Dominion might. "Remember your training," Vethrak growled to his warriors. "These humans are soft and weak. They've never faced real warriors. Show no mercy. Take no prisoners until they beg." The drop pod screamed through Earth's atmosphere, flames licking at the heat shields. It was a terrifying sight, designed to strike fear into the hearts of any who witnessed it. The pod slammed into the ground in the middle of a large open area that the humans called a park. Vethrak and his warriors burst out, weapons raised, war cries echoing from their throats. And then they stopped. Instead of screaming civilians running for their lives, they were surrounded by a crowd of humans who were cheering and taking photographs with small devices. Amazing costumes. Someone shouted in a language that Vethrak's translator struggled to process. "What anime are you from?" A young female human approached with absolutely no fear. She was dressed in a strange, colorful outfit and had her hair dyed an unnatural shade of pink. "Oh my God, your armor is incredible!" she exclaimed, reaching out to touch Vethrak's chest plate. "Is this real metal? How did you make the scales look so realistic? Are those animatronics?" Vethrak raised his plasma rifle, pointing it directly at her face. "Silence, human! I am Commander Vethrak of the Dominion Death Guard. Your city belongs to us now." The girl squealed with delight. "Your voice modulator is so good. You have to tell me where you got it." She turned to her friends. "Quick, get a picture of me with the alien cosplayers." Within minutes, Vethrak and his squad were surrounded by hundreds of humans, all wanting photographs, all asking questions about their costumes, all treating them like entertainment rather than conquerors. "Commander," one of his warriors said through the private communication channel, "what do we do?" "I tried to fire a warning shot, but a child thought it was fireworks and asked for another." "These humans are insane," another warrior added. "One of them is asking if we want to join something called a cosplay competition." Vethrak tried to establish order. He fired his plasma rifle into the sky, creating a massive explosion of light and heat. The crowd applauded. "Great special effects." Someone yelled. A human male approached Vethrak with a card. "Hey, my company makes movies. Have you ever considered acting? We could use someone with your presence for our next science fiction film. The pay is really good." Vethrak did not know what a movie was, but he was certain he was being mocked. He grabbed the human by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "I am not an actor. I am a warrior. I have destroyed civilizations." The human, somehow still not terrified, managed to give a thumbs up to his friends. "Method acting," he croaked. "This guy is committed." Meanwhile, in New York, the second Death Guard team was having an equally confusing experience. They had landed near a transportation center that the humans called a subway station. As they emerged from their drop pod, weapons ready, they were immediately approached by humans in uniforms. "Hey, you cannot carry those in here," one of the uniformed humans shouted, pointing at their plasma rifles. "This is a no-weapon zone. Do you have permits for those?" "We are the Death Guard of the Valorian Dominion," the squad leader announced. "We answer to no human authority." "Yeah, well, you answer to the NYPD in this city, buddy. Hand over the weapons or we are going to have a problem." What followed was a 2-hour standoff that ended with the Death Guard's weapons being confiscated as suspicious items and the squad leader receiving 3 citations for public disturbance, jaywalking, and failure to comply with lawful orders. The warriors, trained to face death without fear, found themselves utterly defeated by paperwork. They were told they would need to appear in court in 6 weeks, and that failure to appear would result in a warrant for their arrest. What is happening? The squad leader asked nobody in particular as a human put a small paper ticket into his clawed hand. In Snow Paulo, the third team encountered perhaps the strangest situation of all. They had the misfortune of landing in the middle of something called Carnival, a celebration that seemed to involve the entire city. The streets were filled with music, dancing, colorful costumes, and more humans than the warriors had ever seen in one place. Instead of running in terror, the crowds absorbed the Death Guard into the celebration. Within minutes, the warriors found themselves being taught dance moves by humans, who seemed completely unafraid of their weapons or their threats. Someone placed a feathered headdress on one warrior's head. Another was handed a drink in a coconut. A third was pulled into a dancing line by a group of elderly humans who apparently found his confused expression hilarious. "This is not an invasion," the squad leader screamed into his communicator. "This is a party. They think we are part of a party." By the end of the day, 3 Death Guard warriors had decided they no longer wished to return to the fleet. They had discovered that humans made something called churrasco, grilled meat on sticks, and they wanted to learn how to make it. "I have killed for the Dominion for 40 years, one of them explained to his horrified commander. "No one ever gave me meat on a stick. These humans gave me meat on a stick for free." When the reports reached High Sovereign Kethvaran, he refused to believe them at first. His elite warriors, the terror of the galaxy, had been defeated by costumes, paperwork, and a street festival? "This cannot be accurate," he insisted. "These reports must be exaggerated." But the video evidence was undeniable. There was Commander Vethric, surrounded by smiling humans, posing for photographs. There was the New York team, standing helplessly while a human in a blue uniform wrote on a small pad. There was the Snow Polo team, one of them wearing a feathered costume and dancing. "What are these creatures?" Kethvaran whispered. "Why do they not fear us?" Admiral Jethari had no answer. In all their centuries of conquest, they had never encountered anything like this. Species were supposed to fight or flee or surrender. They were not supposed to treat an invasion as an opportunity for photographs and parties. "My sovereign," a communications officer interrupted, "we are receiving a transmission from Earth. It appears to be from their entertainment media." The transmission played on the main screen. A human was speaking directly to the camera. In other news, the alien invasion continues to be the hit of the season. Social media is flooded with photos of the adorable alien cosplayers who appeared in 3 cities today. Merchandise sales are through the roof, and the aliens themselves have become overnight celebrities. We will keep you updated on this developing and absolutely delightful story. The war chamber was silent. Somewhere on Earth, humans were laughing, dancing, and turning the Dominion's greatest warriors into a source of amusement. And the Dominion still had no idea how to respond. Humanity pushes back. 7 months had passed since the Valorian Dominion declared war on humanity, and High Sovereign Kethvaran was losing his mind. Every attempt to terrorize the humans had failed. The fleet's presence was now considered a tourist attraction. The Death Guard had become internet celebrities. Kethvaran's own face was on shirts sold in human shopping centers, usually accompanied by phrases like, "I survived the alien invasion," or "My other car is Dominion warship." But the final insult came when the Dominion's communication satellites began interfering with human broadcasting signals. "My sovereign," Admiral Jethari reported, "the humans are finally responding with aggression." "Excellent," Kethvaran exclaimed, feeling hope for the first time in months. "Are they mobilizing their military? Preparing weapons?" "Not exactly, my sovereign. Apparently our presence is disrupting something they call streaming services. Humans were unable to watch their entertainment programs last night, and now they are very angry." Kethvaran's hope faded. "They are angry about entertainment?" "It appears so. We have received thousands of complaints." One human organization called Netflix has filed something called a lawsuit against the Dominion for interference with business operations. Another organization says we owe them $5 billion. And so it began not a war of weapons, but a war of something far more terrifying. Humanity mobilized its most dangerous forces, warriors that no species in the galaxy had ever encountered. Lawyers. Within days, the Dominion found itself drowning in legal documents. Lawsuits poured in from every direction, personal injury claims from people who said the drop pods had damaged their property, environmental complaints about pollution from the fleet's engines, Copyright claims arguing that the Dominion had used human music without permission in their broadcasts. What is a copyright? Admiral Jethari demanded. We do not know, Admiral, but apparently we have violated thousands of them. A team of human lawyers appeared via video transmission, demanding to negotiate. They spoke in a language of precedents and liabilities and punitive damages that no Dominion translator could fully process. Your unauthorized presence in Earth's orbital space constitutes a violation of 17 international treaties, the lead lawyer stated, shuffling through papers. Furthermore, your declaration of war was never properly filed with the United Nations, making it legally invalid. You cannot declare war on a sovereign entity without proper notification, and an email that gets marked as spam does not count. We sent the Declaration of Dominance. HFY protested. It was received. Received, yes. Legally served, no. There are procedures. Your sovereign. I have here Form 1099 War, which must be completed in triplicate, witnessed by 2 neutral parties, and submitted no less than 30 days before hostilities commence. Did you complete Form 1099 War? HFY had no idea what the human was talking about. I have conquered 43 species. I do not fill out forms. Then I am afraid your conquest is not legally binding. My clients are prepared to countersue for harassment, emotional distress, and something my colleague is calling cosmic trespassing. But the lawyers were only the beginning. Next came the accountants. The human economic attack was subtle and devastating. Suddenly, the Dominion found that all their credit lines with intergalactic trading partners had been frozen. Human financial institutions had spread rumors about the Dominion's unstable leadership and poor fiscal decisions. They cannot do this. HFY raged. We are the most powerful empire in the sector. Apparently, my sovereign, power means nothing to something called credit rating agencies. Our rating has been downgraded to junk status. No one will trade with us until we resolve our legal issues with Earth. Then came the hackers. It started small, a few glitches in the fleet's computer systems, a strange delay in communications. The Dominion's IT specialists investigated and found something incredible. Human code was spreading through their networks like a disease. The attackers were not military specialists or government agents. They were teenagers, bored programmers, and one retired grandmother named Ethel, who said she was defending her grandchildren's future. The fleet's weapon systems were not affected. The humans seemed uninterested in military targets. Instead, they attacked morale. Every screen on every ship began displaying software updates that required mandatory restarts. The updates accomplished nothing but took hours to complete. Work stopped across the fleet as warriors waited for their systems to reboot. Then came the advertisements. Somehow, human commercial messages had infected the Dominion's internal network. Every time someone opened a file, they were asked if they wanted to save 15% on car insurance or try this one weird trick to lose belly fat. Pop-up windows appeared that could not be closed. Clicking the X button only opened more pop-ups. The fleet's communications officers spent days trying to remove something called malware, while advertisements for human products played on every screen. The final humiliation was the CAPTCHA attack. Suddenly, every action on the Dominion's network required completing a small test to prove the user was not a robot. Select all images containing traffic lights. The screen demanded. What is a traffic light? Warriors screamed at their consoles. The Dominion's military operations ground to a complete halt. Not because of weapons or warfare, but because nobody could figure out which squares contained boats. This is impossible, Admiral Jethari shouted, stabbing at his console for the 100th time. I have completed the test correctly, but it keeps saying I failed. "The tests are designed to be frustrating, Admiral," a human voice suddenly said over the communication channel. Jetheri spun around. On his screen was a young human female with colorful hair and a smirk on her face. "Who are you? How did you access this channel?" "My name is not important. I am just one of the thousands of humans who decided that your invasion was annoying. We are not soldiers or government agents. We are just regular people who got bored and decided to mess with you. You have crippled our fleet with advertisements and impossible tests." "Yep," the human said proudly. "My grandma Ethel wrote the CAPTCHA code. She says you should try clicking more carefully." Jetheri had no response. The greatest military force in the sector had been defeated by a grandmother and her puzzles. Back on Earth, humanity went about its daily life. Most people had forgotten about the invasion entirely. It had become background noise, less important as sports scores and weather reports. Margaret Chen, still working in the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs with her tiny budget and single filing cabinet, received a notification that the Dominion had requested a formal meeting. "Finally," she muttered, taking a sip of her coffee. "Maybe now we can get some actual work done." She submitted the meeting request to her supervisor, who submitted it to their supervisor, who submitted it to a committee, who scheduled a review meeting to discuss the possibility of maybe considering the request at some point in the future. Bureaucracy, humanity's greatest weapon, continued its slow and unstoppable march. And in the war chamber of the Valorian Dominion, High Sovereign Kethvaran sat in darkness, staring at a screen that demanded he verify his email address before proceeding. He had conquered 43 species, but he could not defeat a password reset form. For the first time in his reign, he considered the possibility that this war was already lost. The quiet victory High Sovereign Kethvaran had ruled the Valorian Dominion for 300 years, and in all that time, he had never felt so small. His fleet remained in orbit around Earth, but it was no longer a threatening presence. Human tourist ships now flew past the warships regularly, their passengers waving and taking photographs. A human company had attached a giant banner to the side of one destroyer that read, "Visit Earth, the planet too weird to conquer." The Dominion's economy was in ruins, strangled by human financial attacks and legal claims. Their computer systems were barely functional, plagued by pop-up advertisements and impossible verification tests. Their elite Death Guard warriors had become celebrities, appearing on human entertainment programs and cooking shows. 3 more Death Guard had defected last week, opening a restaurant in Brazil that specialized in fusion cuisine, whatever that meant. Kethvaran had no choice. After 9 months of this nightmare, he formally requested a meeting with Earth's leaders to negotiate peace. The request was approved after only 6 weeks of bureaucratic processing, which the humans apparently considered fast-tracked. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon at 2:30 p.m. local time. Kethvaran was informed that there was a scheduling conflict, so his meeting would need to end by 4 p.m. because the conference room was needed for a budget planning session. He was also asked to bring identification, sign in at the front desk, and wear a visitor badge at all times. The High Sovereign of the Valorian Dominion, conqueror of 43 species, arrived at the human government building exactly on time. He was given a paper badge that said "Visitor" in large letters and directed to wait in a lobby with uncomfortable chairs. "The committee will be with you shortly," a human receptionist told him without looking up from her computer. Kethvaran waited for 45 minutes. When he was finally led into the conference room, he found not warriors or generals, but a group of tired-looking humans in plain clothing. Several of them were looking at small devices instead of at him. One was yawning. A human female at the head of the table looked up and smiled. "Ah, Mr. Kethvaran, please sit down. I am Director Reyes, and I will be chairing this meeting. Can we get you anything? Water? Coffee?" I am High Sovereign Kethvaran, ruler of the Valorian Dominion. He protested. I do not. Right, my apologies. Now, I understand you want to discuss ending the She checked her notes. The war? Is that still ongoing? I thought that ended months ago. We never surrendered. Kethvaran insisted. Oh, of course. My mistake. So, what would you like to discuss? Kethvaran had prepared a speech. He had rehearsed demands and conditions and threats. But sitting in this small room with these bored humans, all of it suddenly seemed pointless. Why? He asked instead, his voice barely above a whisper. Director Reyes raised an eyebrow. Why what? Why were you not afraid? The room fell silent. Even the humans who had been looking at their devices paused. Director Reyes leaned back in her chair, studying the alien before her. After a long moment, she spoke. Do you know how old your species is, High Sovereign? We have existed for nearly 50,000 years, Kethvaran said proudly. We are one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Impressive, Reyes nodded. Do you know how long humans have been killing each other? Kethvaran did not respond. 200,000 years, she continued. That is how long our species has existed, and we have been fighting ourselves for almost every moment of it. We have survived ice ages that nearly wiped us out. We have survived plagues that killed half our population. We have survived wars where we killed millions of our own kind. She stood up and walked to a window, looking out at the city below. We split the atom and nearly destroyed ourselves with it. We invented weapons that could end all life on our planet several times over, and we pointed them at each other for decades. We poisoned our own air and water and then argued about whether we should stop. Kethvaran listened in growing disbelief. You came here with 200 ships, Reyes said, turning back to face him. We have 8 billion people. We have been practicing war on each other since before your species learned to use fire. We have become experts at surviving, adapting, and absorbing anything that comes our way. Another human at the table spoke up, an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. I worked in retail for 30 years, he said. Do you know what Black Friday is? Kethvaran shook his head. Once a year, humans fight each other, sometimes to the death, over discounted consumer goods. People have been trampled, beaten, and stabbed over televisions and toys. I have seen things that would make your Death Guard weep. The other humans nodded in agreement. Your invasion was not even the most stressful thing that happened to most people that week, Director Reyes said. Traffic was worse. Kethvaran sat in silence, processing this information. Everything he knew about warfare and conquest was based on certain assumptions. That species feared death. That they would panic when faced with overwhelming force. That they would surrender to avoid destruction. But these humans did not seem to fear death. They lived with it constantly. They caused it themselves and kept going. They faced the end of their world and made jokes about it. We are not brave, Director Reyes said, as if reading his thoughts. We are just used to terrible things. Your invasion was frightening, yes, but we have scared ourselves far worse. Your empire is a threat, but we have threatened our own existence many times and survived. She reached across the table and handed Kethvaran a piece of paper. Here are the terms of your surrender. They are very reasonable. We do not want your empire or your resources. We just want you to stop being annoying. Kethvaran read the document. The humans wanted trade agreements, technology sharing, an end to hostile actions, and a public apology. They also wanted the Dominion to pay for the damage caused by the drop pods and to settle all outstanding lawsuits. It was humiliating, but it was also merciful. They could have demanded so much more. Why are you being so generous? He asked. Reyes smiled. Because we are human. We fight like demons, but we also forgive. We hold grudges, but we also form friendships. We are a contradiction wrapped in chaos, and somehow it works." She extended her hand. "Also, your warriors opened a really good restaurant in Snow Hollow, and we would like them to stay." Keth looked at the hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he took it. 1 year later, the Valorian Dominion and humanity had become trading partners. Human coffee shops had opened on 17 Dominion worlds. The former Death Guard restaurant had expanded to a chain with locations across 3 star systems. High Sovereign Keth had retired from conquest. He spent his days writing a book titled Humans a Warning, which became the best-selling text in the known galaxy. Every species read it, and none of them ever attempted to invade Earth. The final line of the book was quoted in academic institutions and military academies for centuries to come. "They did not defeat us with weapons or strategy. They defeated us by being so impossible that we simply gave up. They absorbed us into their chaos, and now we are selling their coffee. Do not invade Earth. They are not afraid of death. They invented it. They are not afraid of war. They perfected it. And they are not afraid of you. Nothing frightens them except running out of coffee. Learn from my failure and stay away." And so the humans continued as they always had, fighting, laughing, loving, and somehow surviving everything the universe threw at them. They had faced the greatest military power in the galaxy and turned it into a business opportunity. They had met the Death Guard and made them celebrities. They had received a declaration of war and responded with memes. They were human, and that was enough. It was always enough.